What is unethical as frick, but is extremely common practice in the business world? Insurance company not paying the full coverage amount right away. Example with round numbers. You own a house with a $100,000 insurance policy. The house burns down. Insurance company offers you $50,000 right away if you sign away any claim for more money. If you want the full $100,000, then you will have to wait months or years. You might have to get a lawyer and sue. In the meantime, you have no place to live, and you can't start the healing process of planning to rebuild. The last company I was at would do forced overtime with no notice and would occasionally do 7 days a week 12-hour days. In my area there's a law that you can't force 7 days in a week, and at morning meetings they flat out would tell you that they will pay the fine for breaking that law if needed, and that if you don't make it in, they will let you go. Convenience charges. These especially anger me. BC more than half the time it is for something being done electronically. Convenience fee? You mean me using my own printer and paper is something I need to pay you for? BC it's so convenient. Also baggage fees. You're talking about Ticketmaster. £2.50 convenience fee to print these tickets off yourself rather than get them in the post. £1.50 for e-ticket where you don't need to print anything. Just let them scan your phone screen. I'll always avoid Ticketmaster if I have the choice. Insurance companies denying a claim the first time it shows up in their system just to see if they can get away with not paying it. I see it primarily with the big companies where I am in the manufacturing circles. Hire a huge wave of temps, sign them on for 3-6 months, usually with the promise of full-time work with bulls lines of we're growing at such a rapid pace. We need people only to get rid of them when the contract runs out. Rinse and repeat. That way no one has to pay for benefits and insurance. Put your thoughts and words to actions. Get enough whispers together and you have a roar. No longer shall any of us roll over and play dead. We're obviously working with a broken system and we need to step up and say, no more. I suggest that you all research who in your state's areas are running and who you agree with most and go vote during the midterms coming up. Go vote. Doing nothing is one of the worst things anyone can do. The culture of don't talk about how much you're being paid. In reality, companies often pay some employees way less than others, simply because they don't know that their position is worth more. If we started sharing our salaries with our co-workers, managers would be forced to pay equal wages to equal positions. But managers have created a culture where it's unacceptable to talk about how much you get paid, so that employees aren't aware what people around them are getting paid. I'm not sure if it's federal or not, but it is illegal in my state at least for a company to dissuade employees from discussing their salaries with each other. I'd check into it in your area, and maybe start having some conversations about your pay scale with your co-workers. Earning bonuses and perks based on numbers instead of quality of work. Right out of college I was the third shift supervisor for a dog food plant. Every once in a while a shift would run a peak efficiency and put out a massive amount of packaging. If your shift managed to break the record for a particular line, the shift and team leaders would get a small bonus and recognition. I come in one night for my shift and second shift was really cranking it out. They broke a record. Turns out that in an attempt to break the record, they somehow missed that the date stamping machine was not accurate. Everything that they packed was now dated incorrectly and could not go out. My shift spent the entire night unboxing everything from the previous shift and dumping it one can at a time into wheelbarrows so it could be repackaged later. Second shift still got credit for the record, and my shift got dinged for no output for an entire shift. Asking salaried employees to work more than their normal 40 hours schedule and not during an emergency situation. Essentially making someone work OT for planned work without increasing their pay or giving them the time back. My manager worked a month solid because we were short-staffed. I told him to take some days off but he refused, saying we don't have the people. I can't. It really frustrated me because the guy is super cool and he didn't deserve that at all. But he makes salary, so you better believe he didn't get any extra pay. Non-compete clauses in hiring contracts. This makes it so the company can offer a person lower raises in the future, knowing that they cannot work for another company doing what they are good at if they quit. These are almost all garbage clauses BTW. It's very rare that a company will try legal means to stop you, and even rarer for them to succeed. It's mostly an intimidation tactic for employee retention and to keep wages lower. Messing with employees' time cards and shorting them hours they worked. An alarming amount of bosses I have worked for didn't see anything wrong with this. Only when the Department of Labor came in and told them it was illegal did they change. And no, even if you suspect the employee stole from you, you still can't dock their pay to cover for the loss. You can fire them and pursue small claims, but you cannot frick with their time card. I once worked for a place that tried to add my overtime hours to the next pay period's paycheck so they wouldn't have to cover OT pay. So let's say I worked 50 hours in week 1. They would schedule me for 30 hours the next week and add the 10 hours from week 1 to make it look like I worked 40 hours each week. Pretty crappy thing to do. So happy I no longer work there. Paying workers poverty level wages and 1. Expecting society to pick up the slack through social safety nets. 2. Making them pay for work uniforms, or otherwise placing unnecessary work-related cost burdens on them. 3. Scheduling them in a manner that makes it difficult to work a second job, or treating their second job as a conflict of interests. I personally witnessed 1 and 2 when I was a teenager working part-time. Many of the adults I worked with really struggled to make ends meet, even those who had full-time hours. I've heard of 3 from many friends. Employers who would only give part-time hours, release unpredictable schedules with only minimum notice, and refuse to work with employees trying to coordinate second and third jobs to make ends meet. Companies, especially large ones, that only give percentage raises for promotions based on your current salary, and not what the position is actually supposed to be paid. I got 2 promotions without a pay raise because they realized technically I was supposed to be at a higher level since I was doing the job of that level. When I complained, they said HR would take a look at the compensation and determine if a raise was needed. Didn't hear back, so I pressed it and was told, oh yeah, they said number. Make people do the work of more than one person with enough pay to support half of a person. Pretty much all part-time retail positions. Those companies thrive on overworking people and underpaying them. In the US medical industry, pricing medicine at exorbitant rates when there are no competitors and the alternative is either a shorter life expectancy or death. As a type 1 diabetic, I have developed a strong dislike of Lilly for their actions with Humalog, of which is now worth twice as much as gold by weight, with a price increase from $25 ml to $280 per ml over 20 years, despite the medicine being exactly the same and artificially mass-produced by Lilly from their own patented modified pancreatic cells. Intern slaves. Zero compensation, no mentorship, just free work with a promise of a possibility of getting hired in when you're done. In a perfect world, they are being actively mentored, and that in my opinion could possibly justify not paying them. But if they are doing work and actively furthering their career, and you value them, why not pay them at least minimum wage? People say millennials are spoiled and lazy and live with their parents. But what money do they have to move out? They need an internship to get a job to get money to move out. But if the internship isn't paying, then that causes a delay. And no, the solution isn't to force kids to do free internships, work a part-time job or 2, while balancing their studies and their social life and other activities and the rest of their life. The idea that you are part of the family at work. Yes, you need to play along with that to maintain good stature. But they seriously don't give a frick about you, and you can't use the family card when you're getting fired or otherwise. Another way to put it, I guess, is that there is implied loyalty on behalf of the employee to the company, but there is absolutely no loyalty consideration when it comes from the company to the employee. 24 years of good service, 1 frick up, see you later, fired. Mayo my work sometimes emails us and talks about the family-like vibe. Good for with that horse crap. Insurance companies. In my short time working at a healthcare one, I was disgusted at the excuses people would make just to not cover someone. I couldn't handle it after 2 weeks because it would make me physically ill because of those It's somewhat indirectly unethical, but refusing to give a proper, adequate budgets to IT departments. A lot of companies and government organizations see IT as a money pit that spends a lot but doesn't directly contribute to the company's profits. So it's not uncommon for IT departments to either have difficult budgets to work with, or increased scrutiny from finance upper management. The problem is, when an IT department doesn't have enough money, they have to choose what they spend it on, and what to defer to a later year, and often, security-related expenditures are the ones that get pushed aside until next year, because employees outside of IT are very likely to notice a service outage or slow network, but they're not likely to notice or care that their anti-virus is out of date. Not to mention, employees also notice when support tickets take 2-3 days to get resolved, or when an outage lasts too long. They don't notice when there's no one reviewing security logs, applying monthly patches, or investigating the alert they got from the firewall. And where does this all lead to? If a company's security posture is weak, that's how breaches happen. By refusing to give their IT department enough money to invest in information security, they are putting their customers' information at risk. If an IT department is not able to put the resources into maintaining a strong security posture, it's just a matter of time before a malicious actor finds a way in. TLDR: if a company doesn't give IT enough budget, they may not be able to invest enough into security and put customer data at risk of exposure just to save a few dollars. Driving a corporation into the ground and being allowed to screw people out of their pensions by declaring bankruptcy. Sears Canada. Edit. Ad. And giving the senior executives bloated bonuses for not bailing from the very situation they created. You forgot raiding the employee pension fund for years to give execs annual bloated bonuses, then giving themselves one extra big bonus after filing for bankruptcy and begging the government to let them opt out of paying severance pay to the thousands of employees because the execs needed that bonus. Closed-door meetings where competing companies, for example cable providers, will meet up and decide to fix the price for a particular service at a rough value in order to reduce competition. Really sucks for the consumer as there is no incentive to switch cable providers for better deals etc. This is illegal if they get caught. Implying that hard work, dedication and being a team player will get you raises and promotion, but never delivering on those implied promises. Refusing to give people full-time work, max 35 hours a week, and then changing their schedule pretty much every week so they can't get a second job. Finding someone who is a good fit for the company culture. My wife is in HR, and she confesses this is the socially acceptable way to say a company is blatantly profiling potential candidates based on gender, race, age, religion. We recently made a job offer to a black guy but he went elsewhere. One of our recruiting managers was upset because she wanted to diversify the office. Ended up hiring a different black guy and he's brilliant at his job. His race shouldn't have played any factor at all, since his skills and abilities would have easily gotten him the same offer, and yet. Wage theft, lying to employees, lying to job candidates, over-assigning work, to give appearance of inability to perform work, permitting a hostile workplace, jobs with a name, exchanging an employee's overtime with time off. Selecting a person you're attracted to and giving them preferential treatment. A friend of mine got a serious boost in her early career by being an attractive 20-something around a male boss going through a divorce. She never did anything, but she took the promotion and the $10K raise, stuck around for just over a year, and then leveraged that position to get a management job herself at another company. AKA, Barnaby Joyce's media director being paid $190K a year for making a single Facebook post a day. Refusing to hire young women based on the possibility that they might get pregnant and go on maternity leave. It's actually an illegal form of discrimination, but many companies do it. One of my friends was asked if she planned to have more children in a job interview, even though she'd already had her tubes tied. It was highly implied that she wouldn't get the job if she said yes. And of course, guys are never asked this question because no one even expects them to take paternity leave. This sucks all around for everyone. And meaningless rant. The baby boomer generation gets mad at us for not having kids until we're 35, or in some cases ever, but then refuse to hire young people because they might get pregnant. So there's that. The whole not taking paternity leave shocks me. I was a long-term substitute teacher last year for a male who took 12 weeks off. It seemed normal to everyone at my school, which is private, but when I told people what the situation was, everybody was shocked that he got 12 weeks off for paternity. Like it's so strange that my school gives new dads time off. Finding ways to fire pregnant employees or employees W young children as they tend to call in sick or have emergency days used for their children. Wage theft. Not paying people for the time worked, altering time cards, all sorts of variations. It is estimated that wage theft keeps $40 to $60 billion out of the hands of wage earners every year in the United States alone. It is illegal and happens most commonly to the poorest Americans. It is a primary example of the capital holding class exploiting the labor class to further reinforce their own wealth. I'm like 90% sure that my boss deducted hours from me. I have no proof as I didn't track my hours, and it happened close to half a year ago, so I doubt I can bring it up. It was probably in total maybe $500, and I know that's not much to most people, but as a college student, it's a crap ton to me. Pretty much the gamut has been run in corporate America, and unless it hits TV screens it won't matter. Companies are a multi-tiered entity that cannot go to jail, and whose punishments only amount to fractions of a percent as to what potential profits could yield. Worst part is most are designed to where their operating directives necessitate its survival via profits, meaning morality is a hindrance to longevity statistically. Throw in lobbying upon success and you've got yourself another fold in the dystopian corporate-controlled America. Having worked in manufacturing to support consumerism for many companies over 30 years, I would say telling different factories within the organization that the plant or factory must save money at all costs. We must cut staff. We are not competitive. But there is the annual trade show in Vegas, with themed parties, extravagant spending, wild expense reports, and secret bonuses. I've seen it most in the software industry, but it's everywhere. Selling customers features add-ons, products you know they don't need. Cutting your scheduled hours, then calling you into work outside of those scheduled hours only to not pay you for that work. Essentially cutting your hours and conning you into volunteering without outright saying it. I worked at a fast food place as a teenager that did that, sometimes only giving me 4 to 8 hours a week, then calling me in for late shifts. None of the unscheduled hours they called me in for showed up on my paycheck. I've talked to people that worked at their other location in my town and it was the exact same for them, too. In the US and Canada at least that is blatantly illegal. Convincing people to invest in a particular stock or to buy a particular product because of kickbacks from the manufacturer. Doctors do this with medications from pharmaceutical companies that pay them off. People who work in stocks will do this, offering a free trial period for some premium service, but the person receiving the free trial has to call to cancel it, or it automatically starts getting charged to them. Similarly, advertising your promotional cost for the first 3 months, and only mentioning in the fine print that the price gets jacked up after that. Especially when you either outright lie when people ask you what the regular price is, or wording your response so that it sounds like the promo price is the permanent price. But you had a little wiggle room in there in case they were recording the call. Gas stations charging that extra $0.009 per gallon. How is it legal to charge in denominations we can't get change for? Double booking or lying to you about how long someone will take to get to you. I used to work in a strippergram agency office many years ago, college. My boss would constantly send girls out with 3 bookings for 7 p.m. then lie to the last booking about why she was an hour and a half late. If you want hired entertainers workmen to turn up on time, tell them you will be leaving half an hour after the booking time. Works like a charm. Many drugs companies do absolutely no research and development to produce drugs and simply buy up other firms with existing patents and are selling the drug on the market. They then hike the price of a drug tenfold, and often more. What's more, doing this is totally legal and fairly unregulated. Of course, this hurts people in countries where medical care isn't free, or completely free, and patients have to buy their own medicine. Rabak23 notes that this also harms typically socialist countries with free healthcare, as more expensive drugs negatively impact the taxpayer. There's an interesting example on this on a Netflix documentary called Dirty Money, where the show follows the illegal practices of a drug company called Valiant. In the TV news media world, it is common to mandate employees be on call without extra pay. You're not really off if you have to have the phone nearby, be close enough to the station to drive in, and not be able to do things like drink. Many salaried newsroom workers are also exempt from overtime, but the way their schedule workload is, they commonly work 9 12-hour shifts with no break. For instance, a reporter photographer crew may be scheduled 9:30 6:30 p.m. dayside. They have a 6 p.m. live shot on the other side of town that's not cleared until 6:15. After breaking down all the equipment, they have to drive back to the station to return the live truck. Usually those folks don't get back until at least 6:45-7. Short turnarounds are also just a part of that life. You work until 11:45 p.m. then have to be at work at 5:30 a.m. During my first job, I was a weekend producer and was always at the station from noon until 11 p.m. No dinner break. Your 2-hour long break is factored into the shift time, but it's such a joke hardly anyone is able to actually take it. Would rather work a straight 8 instead, which would really turn into 9 hours anyways. Who are we kidding? There is so much mandatory overtime in TV news, and lots of those folks do not get paid for it. In fact, I went on a job interview at one station in Florida and was told my first year I would get 0 vacation, but could earn payback days. No thanks. I left the business 4 months ago and have never been happier. I was in CEO for a private company owned by this family. The matriarch was a bee to work for. I constantly clashed with her over some of her whims. We had this office laborer who was mentally challenged. He tried to do a good job and he worked hard. The bee let it be known she didn't like him and wanted him gone. We did have a policy and procedures manual that pretty much laid out the reasons someone could be fired. B told several staff members that if someone found just cause to fire him, they got a $250 gift card to Ruth's Chris. It only took a few weeks. They nailed him on something petty, even denied him unemployment. Coming up with reasons for termination to deny unemployment is pretty common. Externalities. A business should pay for the full cost of producing a good, including proper waste disposal, labor, etc. Successful businesses are defined by those making the most profits. Having the least costs is the greater portion of that battle. So the goal is essentially to put costs off onto anybody else, the environment, desperate countries, etc. Problem is corporations are legally bound to do everything in their power to bring money to the shareholders, which means they're not even supposed to spend money ethically dealing with costs. They're supposed to put costs off onto literally anyone else but themselves in the interest of profit. Leads to environmental damage such as pollution to rid waste and use of other countries with less environmental regulation and regulations on a minimum wage or work conditions. So successful companies are those who employ children for cents a day and destroy their local rivers ecosystems so that a company in another country can make so much money that individuals are making millions on the degradation of another's society. Planned obsolescence. Basically, making products with the intention that they break so consumers buy more or pay shed loads to get stuff fixed. Looking at you, Apple, with your stupid glass panel that can't be replaced without rebuilding the whole freaking phone. Did you know that there are laws for how long a light bulb has to work minimum because companies back then built them to break after a month? The first light bulbs actually basically never broke. There is still one in a firefighter station that works since 118 years or something. Working your employees to the bone and being condescending when they complain to make them feel bad so they'll shut up and work harder, saving you labor costs. We don't have enough people to get this done today. This is a one-man job. You should be able to do it in 4 hours. The two of you should have it done in 2. It's not hard. Nepotism, cronyism and favoritism all used to be looked down upon by society. Saying someone only got their job because they were related to an existing employee, or saying someone was a brown noser or that so and so got a raise because they were friends with the boss outside of work all used to be insults and made those things somewhat taboo. Then at some point an evil genius decided to lump all of them together under the umbrella word networking. Now if you spend any amount of time reading things about how to get ahead in America, like how to get a job, raise, promotion, etc., they all emphasize networking. It is the number one thing they suggest. Networking, networking, networking. Leverage your personal network, they say. I read an article from a recruiter on LinkedIn that literally suggested asking your uncle parents for a job at their company as a way to proactively utilize your network. It has become the opposite of taboo. It has become mandatory. Now if you aren't playing the game, you have a much harder time getting ahead. I'm sure there are still some places that reward work and seniority over blatant favoritism, but the latter has clearly taken over the majority of the corporate world. I personally find it disgusting. But then again, I don't have an uncle that can just hand me a six-figure job. If I did, maybe my opinion would be reversed and I'd be hypocritically defending nepotism and cronyism as somehow superior to meritocracy. Basically how a CEO or whatever titles can basically sink a company, get a golden handshake, frick off for a bit and rocks up at another company in a similar if not the same position again, all because of an old boys club and other vile crap. Exploiting vulnerable people. It's common for big energy companies to offer low tariffs for customers who shop around and jack the price up for loyal customers. They're taking advantage of people who forget or don't know how to switch to a cheaper tariff. It's only recently that the government in the UK stated that these companies are routinely overcharging people. Asking temporary workers to do dangerous tasks that would be illegal with OSHA if they asked their permanent employees to do. Because the temps are legally employees of the Reno agency, the company isn't held responsible for, say, exposure to chemicals without adequate protection. That really needs to be addressed. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.